Hey there, welcome. It's Murder Mystery Week. And today we're going to be looking at and talking about mystery suspense and even the whole writing piece to it. And Ruben, welcome. First off, Ruben, welcome.
Thank you.
Now, Ruben, this has been a fun week. As you know, we've enjoyed the films and the books. But we're looking about writing. What makes this genre, this murder mystery genre, worthwhile? What makes it
Well,
worthwhile?
one of the reasons we're covering it is because it's fun to read and it's fun to teach. And so whether you're reading or you're writing, helping students write murder mysteries, there's a few elements that are very critical to making a successful story, making it fly, or really encountering a great writer. So here are some of the elements. It's got to have a memorable setting. The setting has to be there. And so some of the greatest writers in this genre are set in a real kind of this noirish field, old Raymond Chandler books, Farewell, My Lovely, things like that. Walter Mosley, Devil in a Blue Dress. Part of the fun is to read that book and you get a sense of the 1940s, Watts, Compton, they go through that and you feel it. And you sense like you learn the place. Memorable settings are part of it. Of course, you have to have an interesting detective. Often there's somebody who's trying to solve the case. What is the crime? Another thing is, what is the crime here that is being solved? So remember, it's suspense, but it's also mystery. Who are the suspects? And how do you build suspense? So those are some of the elements that really make a murder mystery or murder suspense type of book intriguing.
Now, you mentioned a few authors, Ruben. Are there any other authors that stand out
I
to
haven't
you?
mentioned any authors.
Oh,
Oh, yes, I did.
you did.
I mentioned Raymond Chandler and
Yeah,
Walter Mosley.
yeah, you did.
That's it. Yeah.
But now, besides those two, are there others that you would say, hey, these are some that I've enjoyed, and so our audience could maybe pick up a book like that?
I like James Ellroy. Not always.
Mhm.
He has fictionalized the Black Dahlia, and it was great because I mentioned the building of suspense, and the suspense is there in terms of you are led along through the murders. Because if you know about the Black Dahlia, it was never solved. The story was never solved. So what keeps a reader reading on to the next chapter? It's the obsession with of the detectives solving it and how they're turning on each other, and then the next murder happens. So it pulls you along. It's one of the greatest books I've ever read in terms of this genre, the Black Dahlia. I also want to point out Ira Levin. Maybe in a part two down the road, we can do a deep dive into his novels. Ira Levin is excellent, and you are left with a cliffhanger at every step of the way, each chapter. I want to go back to one of the elements I mentioned. How do you build suspense? As you're teaching writers, as you're teaching a high school class, this is very critical because a lot of times they just want to talk, or I don't want to say talk, but write and just keep writing and not building anything. You bring out some of these other elements of suspense and you give examples like those two writers. And so my favorite, however, I think I have a book of his right in front of me here, and that would be Donald Westlake. Donald Westlake builds a novel with all of these elements,
Huh.
suspense, interesting settings. But here's what makes him my favorite is that he adds humor. So let's talk about this book. Help, I Am Being Held Prisoner. It's about a man who is sent to prison because he creates these elaborate practical jokes. And so he sets up this elaborate practical joke that sends all these children to the hospital. Now, that alone would have gotten him probation, said the judge. That would have gotten you probation. But the real problem is that congressman got hurt in this elaborate practical joke. Now, you can hurt children, but just don't hurt a congressman. That got him 15 to life in the pen. And so it's a real strange and fun thing that this guy's setting up these practical jokes. But the main character's name is an unfortunate one. His parents are from Germany, and his last name in German means art. But in English, I'll put it to you this way. He keeps having to correct the warden and telling him, you pronounce it Kunt.
Okay.
And so he keeps having to. So there's a real sense of humor in his stories, and but the suspense is there. He has a book titled "Somebody Owes Me Money," and there's a scene where these two tough guys are about to kill him because he's possibly in league with the enemy. He's just a guy who just happens to walk in to his bookie's house to collect his money. His bookie's murdered. Most people would say, "Oh boy, the bookie's murdered. I'm just gonna go my separate way." But he's a guy who's a gambler who wants his money. It's $3,000, and he doesn't let it go. But you and I know that if somebody owes you money and that somebody turns up dead, do you want any part of being around that situation?
No, sir.
Right? You don't want to be around that situation because you look guilty. This guy doesn't care. He wants his money. Okay? So you're laughing at this character. And so I really like Donald Westlake, but I want to point out somebody I like even more.
Really?
Richard Stark, otherwise known as Donald Westlake. This is his pseudonym. And this book right here, Nobody Runs Forever, is a trilogy on a character named Parker that spanned from the 60s all the way into the late 2000s. He had this character who is a tough character who just doesn't care about anything but the heist, the scores that he takes down. And he will take you down if you come in his way. He doesn't care what law enforcement agency you are. He's going to find his way to get his money and to complete his jobs. It is packed with joy and humor. It's strange for the genre to say that, but that's what makes Donald Westlake so interesting. I mentioned that this particular one is in a set of 3, right? It's the same heist. So once this book ends, the very next book, Ask the Parrot, starts from the very last scene. You could read it on its own, Ask the Parrot, but if you read this first, it's better. So Richard Stark, Donald Westlake, has all the elements of suspense, but he adds that humor. Can I read to you from a blog that I wrote about him right after he passed in 2008?
Yeah, go for it.
So so he died in so I wrote this February 17th, 2009 is what I write. On the day he died, December 31st, 2008, Donald Westlake strangled an intruder at his summer home in the Hamptons. He then cooked a lunch of salmon and lentils, which he leisurely ate on his patio as he stared at the dead man's eyes. Interesting, huh? But I made it all up.
Is that true?
No.
I don't say is that true.
To be quite, then I go on. To be quite honest, I made most of that up. Yes, Westlake did die on New Year's Eve, but no, he did not kill an intruder in his home. This is simply my way to pay fitting tribute to one of the great crime novelists of our time. And I go on to say he could flat out write, Few could believe that he could pump out such quality at his pace. And Richard Stark, quote unquote, invented a new breed of literary criminal, a thief who went simply by the name of Parker. Parker is a severely calculated and brutal character who takes down banks and museums with precision, cold logic, and force. The Parker novels span 29 titles. And I do want to point out that one of the things that you could teach when helping a student is how to open a novel. What does your first page say? Better yet, what's the first line in the story? The Stark novels, the Parker novels, are famous for their first lines. Can I give you a few?
Please.
This is from Hunter, December 1962. When a first line, it's the first line in the book. When a fresh-faced guy in a Chevy offered him a lift, Parker told him to go to hell. From The Mourner, 1963. When the guy with the asthma finally came in from the fire escape, Parker rabbit punched him and took his gun away. From Backflash, 1998. When the car stopped rolling, Parker kicked out the rest of the windshield and crawled through onto the wrinkled hood Glock first. From The Seventh. When he didn't get any answer the second time he knocked, Parker kicked the door in. And my favorite first line of all, from Firebreak, 2001. When the phone rang, Parker was in the garage killing a man.
Jeez, brutal.
It's those first lines that get you.
Yeah.
So I just thought I would share that and say that this is a great genre to introduce to your students, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks, Ruben, for sharing all that. I mean, obviously, you are the expert in the literary piece, and I'm glad you were able to share these books. And these are all your ideas regarding the books that we read this week at the film, and even this piece that you share with us. Thanks a lot. And actually, for the audience, thanks for coming with us on this little ride here. And we wish you a great night, and we will see you soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.